Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. And just to let you know, this podcast is not prescriptive, it's an offering. So please take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Welcome back to Women on the Brink. One of the things I love about hosting this podcast is the way it constantly nudges me out of my comfort zone. So, whether it's trying something totally wild, like going into an anger room, which I highly recommend, by the way, showing up to new events, or meeting incredible people, especially women, with stories that crack me open in the best way. Today, I'm introducing you to someone I just met, but who already left a big impression on me. And her name is Urmi Hossain. And her story is such a powerful example of turning challenge into purpose. Urmi was born and raised in Italy to Bangladeshi immigrant parents, and she grew up navigating what's called the third culture kid experience, something I hadn't heard of before, but it makes total sense. So it's when you grow up between cultures, balancing the one at home with the one outside your front door. So in this episode, Urmi shares what that experience was like for her as a young girl and how it pushed her to really ask, who am I and who do I want to become? And she's turned that journey into a book, and even more than that, into a mission. She's now a mentor, a leader, and an advocate for women everywhere trying to find their voice and their power. So, Urmi, I would like to welcome you to Women on the Brink. It's an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, can you take us back to what it was like growing up in Italy as the child of Bangladeshi immigrant parents? I mean, when did you first realize that you were living between two cultures?
I would say I first realized that when I was a teenager. I think when I was much younger, it was not something that occurred to me. It's not something that I thought too much about, meaning that, I was just living the life of a kid and like stress free, carefree. And then when I started to go to high school and I started to, be a teenager, that's when I started to realize the struggle that, I could see how, you know, my friends were treated. I could see how I was treated. I could see, there was a lot of double standards. I could see the struggle that my parents would always say, oh, you're Bengali. We don't do any of these things that your friends do. And it always kept ringing in my ears, this whole sentence, like you cannot do the things that your friend do because you're not like them. And now that I am much older and I think about it, I always reflect about these sentences because I'm like, okay, but if I'm not like them, then why did you move to Italy in the first place if I wasn't supposed to be like them or look like them?
Mm.
And so there was a lot of moments where I had to reflect about some of the things. And that's when, I started to have the struggle of like not being enough, not fitting in, not feeling enough of either one of the two cultures because of these continuous sentences that I used to hear. But it wasn't anyone's fault. It's just the way they were brought up, which was in a way in conflict with the ways that I was being brought up.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is about being a teenager, there's already so many social pressures out there to try and fit in. And then when you're trying to navigate the life that your parents want and the life that's before you, there's often clashes, right? So, what were some of the biggest cultural expectations you had to navigate at home versus, outside of the home?
I would say the biggest struggles were mainly related to the fact that I was Bengali and I was a woman. You know, there was, for instance, some of the struggles that I would face was that I was not allowed to go out, or if I was going out, I was supposed to come home at a certain time, usually by 7 p.m. And if I was going out, I was always asked like where I was going, with who I was spending the time. Had to make sure that I was not being, seeing with guys or any kind of, people, making sure that, I held to the reputation of my parents. Those were first things I would notice, that made me question a little bit. And sometimes I wouldn't like even go against them, because I would think, oh, that was totally fair the way I was being brought up. But often I also found the struggle of also explaining it to some of my Italian friends, because they would be like, okay, but why can you not come? Why can you not do a sleepover? Why can you not go to the cinema with us? And always, I really had struggle explaining it to them, because I wasn't quite sure what to tell them. Like, is it because my parents do not want to? Is it because the culture says so? And usually it was because of the culture, the perception that people have about you if you do certain things, even though you're not doing anything wrong. And so I remember, like, sometimes I would finish school at 2, but I would stay extra hours, because sometimes I would just go for a walk, or I would go to shopping with my friends without telling my parents, for instance, because if I did ask for the permission, I feel like it would have just created so many problems.
More. So really, I mean, it sounds like you really had to choose between parts of yourself, right? How did you eventually overcome this? Or did you overcome it?
I would say I did not overcome it. When I was, 16, 17, 18, it was something that I actually did not overcome. And even now, I still struggle a little bit with it. Like, I'm not living, let's say, with my parents and stuff like that, but I do face other struggles time to time, like being a woman, there is always so much, pressure and expectation the society has on you, that you have to do certain things, you have to follow a certain timeline. But I don't like to live, you know, by following what's considered normal or the convention. I like to do the unconventional. So only now I'm trying to do things a little bit differently. And I also think it comes with age, and with experience and time, you feel a bit more confident and apologetic to live the life that you want to live. But I can definitely say that when I was much younger, I would I was never going against anything. Like, I remember there were like particular episodes where my classmates would go like on a school trip, or they would do like those, you know, 2 3 days trips, not trips like those no, I want to say vacation, but it's not a vacation because you go for educational purposes.
Mhm.
And I was never allowed to go. There was always this fear that, I might be, brainwashed, and I might do something, stupid. And sometimes I miss those times. I wish I did some of those things when I was growing up, because I feel like they really shape the person that you're meant to be. But at the same time, I also try to see the positive things about it. I think that, my parents raised me in a very, I would say they were very strict, but it made me more a disciplined person. So, and now if I want to do a trip, I still go and do it with some of my friends. So I didn't do it before,
Awesome.
I can do it now.
Absolutely. Was there a turning point when you started to reclaim your own identity? Because, you're living in these two worlds. And at some point, you have to say, well, I am a little bit of this and I am a little bit of that. So, was there a point in time where, as you said, with experience and confidence, that you gained this identity of who I am, who is Urmi through all of this?
Yeah, and again, I think this, because now I'm based in Canada. When I moved to Canada, people would ask me this question: "Oh, where are you from?" And this was a question that made me often reflect, because I would say, "Oh, I'm from Italy," and people would look at me and be like, "Okay, but you don't look Italian." Then I would say, "Okay,
Yeah.
I'm Bengali," and people will still look at me and be like, "Okay, but you have an accent when you speak in English." And I always had to spend 30 minutes explaining a little bit of my history, and I was like, "But this it's supposed to be simple."
Yeah.
And this went on and on and on for many years because, of course, I was in university, I was meeting new people, and all the time people ask me that first question. And then I started to work. And after working, I would say probably when I was 27, that's when I started to think a bit deeper about who I am. Like, what is it that I want people to know about me? But at the same time, like, if I have to have a conversation just with myself, like
Yeah.
me, from me to me, if
Hmm.
I want to have that kind of conversation, what would I answer? And that's when I started to think a bit more, I would say, think deeper on this concept about, who do I want to represent? Who do I want to be? What kind of cultures I want to represent? Because I always felt like if I said that I'm Italian, I was not saying 50% of the story. And if I was saying I'm Bengali, again, I felt like I was not telling the full story. And that was important for me. Like, I wanted people to know my identity
Hmm.
for who I am. And that's
Yes.
when I was like, okay, I have to reclaim my identity, but I have to understand myself first. And that's where, like, I started to analyze a little bit my day to day cues, like the fact that I speak Italian and Bengali at the same time, with my sister speaking in Italian, with my parents I speak Italian and Bengali, with some of my cousins that speak in Italian. The same thing when it comes to cooking, I love making pasta, I love eating pasta. I feel like I am myself when I go back to Italy. And those were the little, you know, things that made me really realize and understand my identity. But at the same time, I also didn't want to neglect my other side, which was the Bengali side. And even that is big part of my identity too, the fact that, let's say, we do Ramadan, or the fact that, we have to wear traditional desi clothes, those things. And that's where I was like, okay, but I do a bit of both. So why do I have to choose and not embrace both of them, So that's when I started to be like, okay, I don't need to choose. I just have to be able to embrace them.
Embrace both of them. Yeah. Awesome. I love that. And then you moved to Canada from Italy as a young adult.
Yes.
So again, here you are. You've got to now come to Canada and learn English. Did you learn French as well?
No, actually, I learned both English and French back in Italy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you speak four languages then.
I always say 4.5, Spanish being the point 0.5.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So when you came to Canada, like did it feel like you had to start over culturally, or like did your experience equip you to adapt, easier because of what had happened to you earlier in Italy?
When I think about my experience to Canada, I always think about this cartoon. Do you know the cartoon Dora the Explorer?
Yes.
Yeah, so I always like this is what I think of. I always think about that particular cartoon because I feel like this is who I am. I was exploring something new and that was very foreign to me. And so here's the thing, I approach everything in Canada with a lot of curiosity. And I think the fact that I was so curious made it easier. Like, I think I was like, I want to say happy, but it's not even happy. Like, I would go to university, for instance, and I would see like all these professors from different countries teaching, because in Italy I would not see that. In Italy you just see Italian people. And so I would see that and be like, oh wow, it was so fascinating. This is how I would think in my head. And then when I would go to my classroom and I would see so much diversity, I was like, oh wow, that's so nice. Like, I see people from every single place in this world. And every time I would like sit next to someone, I would start a conversation and I would be like, oh, tell me a bit more about yourself. Where are you from? And then I would like meet people from different parts of the world, which made my whole experience so much more enriching. Because again, when I was in Italy, I did not have that chance. And so for me, it was beautiful because like every single thing was wow for me. And I would even like I would tell my friends from Italy, I'd be like, oh, today I met someone from, let's say, Vietnam. I met another person from Pakistan, and this and that. And it was, I would say this made my, like, it made it so much easier, if I have to tell you the truth. But it's also true that, let's say, like, even when I went to university, like, I was studying in a language that wasn't mine to begin with. And now I'm working in an environment where I'm using French, which is not my language either. So if I go back in time, would I have ever thought that I was going to study and work in two different languages that were not mine to begin with? For sure not. And I think that's a challenge as well, you know?
That's a great analogy. I love the way that you've really put such a positive spin on that and saw yourself as Dora the Explorer and
Mhm.
approached the new country and the new experiences with so much curiosity. And I mean, the fact that, when you're going into the university and you're meeting all these people from all over the world, I guess that did make it a little bit easier for you, knowing that it is so multicultural here in Canada that there is a place for everybody. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I did feel that way. I did feel that way, and I think this is why Canada is a great place in that sense, meaning that it's so welcoming to diversity that it makes it easier, to move here. And you do see diversity, but at the same time you see also diverse community, meaning that you typically don't feel alone because there are communities of, Italian people, Bengali people, Asian people, all these things. So you always belong to something. I do have to say that I was very homesick when I came to Canada, and I do feel nostalgic time to time, even nowadays, because I still feel like I will always say Italy is my home.
Mhm.
I don't have a physical home over there anymore because my parents moved to UK, but it will always be my home. Like when I go back, to Italy and I go and have my croissant, my coffee, like I know that's the taste of my home.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I'm always very, very nostalgic about it, homesick, and I try to in Canada, in Montreal especially, I'm always on the hunt for like, cannolis and you know pasta, cheese, that to bring, the flavor of my home in my own home here in Canada.
Yeah, beautiful. So, I mean, now, okay, you've got this Canadian culture. How do you identify yourself now culturally? Is that a hard question?
It's not a hard question, but it's a question that make me think
Mhm.
because you're not the first person to ask me this. And I do have the Canadian citizenship, but I never go around and say I'm Canadian because I don't feel it in me. But not because I don't like Canada, or not because Canada wasn't welcoming to me. It's just a different feeling, it doesn't have the same feeling that I have when I think about Italy. Um,
It's a second home, and I think where you grow up as a child is home for us, right?
yeah,
Because I've lived
that's
in
why.
different parts of the world as well. And I really did think at one point that Australia was going to be my permanent home, and I became an Australian. But coming back to Canada, I realized Canada is what I identify with most. So I think our childhood memories have a lot to do with it. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that because I think my most beautiful memories are from my childhood, my teenagehood, with my high school friends, and I still talk to them. And even now, time to time, I talk about our high school time and how life was so much easier, so much fun. And I think it's because of that. Like I think it's because of that I think about Italy as my home and will always be my home. And Canada, yes, it is my home, but it's not my primary home. It's my second home, maybe my third home. But like if you ask me, like if you have to go back to some country, like I always tell you, it's gonna be Italy. Like if I don't say Italy, I feel like I'm betraying myself.
For sure, for sure. You're a child of the world, really, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to choose. So you wrote a book about your experience. What role did that book play in your healing or your empowerment?
I would say the book made me realize even more. Like it made me really reflect a bit more about my own childhood and teenagehood because writing it just brought me back to time. it made me realize of all those differences that I could see between the Bengali culture and the Italian culture. Like in the book, I talk about the fact that I went to school, to an Italian school, but it was strictly see nuns going around. You would see a crucifix, and I always questioned those things because I was like, okay, but what's going on, you know? And I could not understand when I was a kid. So I have those memories, and they're so vivid in my mind. Like I remember those things really, really well. And so every time, even now, when I see a nun, I always think about back at those times. You know, I was 6 years old. I remember this. I was 6 years old. I went to school and I would see nuns walking around. I would sit in the classroom and there was a crucifix right there, you know? So those were like little things I remember that made me realize, because I would go back home and my parents would like always remind me, you know, you're like Muslim girl, this and that, you know? Um, that was one particular thing. And I remember when I was in high school, I was told not to go to a religion class because I think there was a big worry that, you know, I was going to convert. Like, so my parents strictly told my teachers, yeah, she cannot attend religion classes because I wouldn't want her to, you know, think differently. That was one thing. And you know, everything was always around religion, I would say. Like my parents would always tell me, yeah, make sure that when you eat something, you always ask what's in it. Like make sure that there is no alcohol in it, there is no pork, you know, always, it was always around that. Um, but it also went a bit extreme too, you know, like I would see, let's say my high school friends, you know, wearing certain type of clothes where my parents were always telling me, no, you have to be modest, you have to cover yourself. I would see, let's say some of my high school friends, let's say dating, bringing their boyfriends at home, openly talking about this with their parents, you know, having a very open communication type of thing. Whereas in South Asian culture, there's no such thing as open communication with your parents. Like it's just, we're not best friends, we are your parents and you are our daughters. It was that kind of relationship. So you would never go and talk about other things, you know. Like if there was anything you wanted to talk about, you would go either to your siblings or you would go to your friends. So
Yeah,
those
and I mean,
little things.
your parents are just really trying to protect you
Yeah.
under the education and the upbringing they've had themselves, right? So it's understandable in many ways where they're coming from, right?
Yes. Even that, it took me a while to understand it because, like, I had this conversation with my English professor who's Italian, and I had this conversation with her, and I told her, like, this is how I felt in high school. But then she made me also realize that my parents were never doing anything wrong against me. It was just the way they were brought up, and it was their way of seeing things, which was only one way of seeing things, you know, like I had different ways of seeing different things, whereas they only had one way and there was only that, you know. So I also understand their point of view.
Definitely. It's almost like though living in multiple cultures has become one of your superpowers because it's very, very enriching traveling and living abroad and learning different cultures. Really opens your mind up to many different possibilities instead of just one way of doing things. Do you feel like has become one of your superpowers?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably. Yeah. And you know what, like, because yes, now I live in Canada, I have lived in Italy, I also have lived in UK for a year. And if I have to, let's say, relocate again, I think I can do this pretty easily. Like it would not be an issue for me.
Yeah, exactly. You could go and do it again. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just going back to that young girl and that teenager, it must have been a little bit lonely at times if, you know, you didn't have somebody close to talk to. Did you find mentors or did you find, you know, what we would call an auntie, somebody who could sort of take you under their wing and be a bit of a mentor for you?
No,
Not at all, eh? Nobody.
no, no,
And
unfortunately.
this is probably what has driven you to want to be there for so many other more women out there, right? Who are perhaps going through something similar to what you went through.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I did not have anyone to look up to, especially because, and probably I did not tell you this other fact, is that when my parents moved from Bangladesh to Italy, they moved to Sicily and they were part of the first flow of immigrants moving to Italy. And my dad often tells me that I was the first one to be born, first Bengali girl to be born in Italy.
Oh, wow.
And so he tells me that I do believe it. I actually want to believe it. I hope it's true. Um, because, and I think it's true, because basically what happened afterwards was that people would come to my father to, let's say, translate things, to help them with understanding things, how to do things. So I think he was the point of reference. And he often tells me, "Yeah, you're the first Bengali girl to be born in Italy." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll take that." And so I was the first one. So I was the oldest one. Even in the community, I was the oldest one. So I was the point of reference for other people, which put a lot of pressure on me. But I did not have anyone to look up to. And I always relied to my high school friends for things, which was difficult for them because they never met someone that was different from them. And so
Right.
for them was a learning process, but I appreciate all the work that they have done because I think they learned a bit more about me and they became aware of the diversity too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think too, I mean, this is probably how you developed your leadership skills is if you had, all of these other people coming to you asking questions, coming to your dad and asking questions. It does put some pressure on you, but you do develop a different skill set through that as well. And you've gone on to join organizations like Fem Influence, which is an organization dedicated to giving back to less privileged communities in South Africa. And that has a strong focus on educating girls and women. And you're also the social media leader of the Victoria chapter of Women in Leadership. How has this journey, I mean, this is big, from Italy to Canada, shaped the work you do today with women in your mentorship role?
You know what? I love everything that I do and I love mentoring because it allowed me to meet different women from different parts of their lives, from different ages, and women from different countries and cultures. And even that, it's always like wow for me because I'm like, wow, I'm meeting someone who's like, did so many different things, someone who comes from a different culture, and it's been very, very enriching. And it made me realize how much we need each other. Like a woman needs another woman, and we need to
100%.
support each other. And lately, like I was part of this organization. Actually, I'm still part of this organization where I was part of this program called Empower M, where you mentor women of color. And I was paired up with this woman who is from India. And it was nice to be, it was nice to mentor her because we come from the same background, it's the same culture. So we understand each other better. So that's why I love those connections because I feel like we're able to help each other. Yes, I'm a mentor, but it does not mean that I cannot learn from my mentee. I always say it's just an exchange of ideas and helping each other. It's never about, okay, me, I'm superior just because I'm your mentor. It's never about that. And it's been a beautiful experience. I feel like it also made me a bit more open minded, broaden my horizon, understand diversity a bit better, and, also made me aware that each woman has unique struggles that we go through.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And I agree with you there. I think when we extend ourselves, whether it's as a mentor in the capacity of a volunteer, we get back far more than we actually give. Anybody, I think, who's done any kind of volunteer work or mentor work will probably say the same thing, that, it's not about how much you're giving, you are actually getting so much out of it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I read a recent article about you in Overachiever magazine, and I love the name of the magazine, where you were talking about your goals for 2025, and you say 2025 is all about experiences. It's about new places, new people, new growth. So you entered the year with a different mindset, and you wanted to create meaningful connections and make more memories. So you said you set a goal for yourself. Each month, you're going to step out of your comfort zone by attending an event, networking with strangers, and trying something new. This sounds so similar to my goals for this year as well. What have you learned from this so far?
There's only one word that comes to my mind right now, which is fun. And actually, because now we're in the month of April, and since January until April, I did something new every month, and everything that I have done so far has been so much fun. Um, and I'm gonna give you a very simple example. Like yesterday, I went to an event called the Paint and Brunch, and it was my first time going. So basically, what you do is that you have a Canva in front of you, and then you have a teacher who teaches you how to paint. And I suck at painting, and I was like, you know what? I'm still gonna go for it because it looks fun. So I went, and it was so much fun. I loved it. I was so happy afterwards. The day before, I went to a conference, and it was my first time going to a conference, and I went on my own. I was like, I don't know anyone, but that's okay. And I was sitting on a table with other women, and I was just learning from there, listening to them. And I was also observing around me. Like I was trying to observe like what kind of people come to these places. And honestly, it was so beautiful, this conference, because it's basically the Toastmasters conference. I don't know if you're familiar with Toastmaster, which is a non-profit profit organization where you learn about public speaking, and they had the district conference. And I'm so happy I went because I listened to some speeches. There was a competition, and at the end of this of each speech, there were about 7 speeches. Basically, each speaker had to introduce themselves, and they had to tell to the audience how long they've been part of Toastmasters. And it was incredible to hear how good some people were just being a Toastmaster for 1 year. And it just made me a bit more motivated to do the same thing too as well. I was like, like if they can do it after 1 year, then I can do it too. And so it was really nice. I felt very much encouraged to keep working on myself. So for me, everything I've done so far has been so much fun. And I love, this whole thing about experiences, like, yes, you're paying to go to these events, but I think you get something out of it. You get to meet people, you build connections, you learn something from someone. And I feel like I'm using my weekends effectively. Sometimes people are just way too caught up with life, and I don't think we take time to enjoy it. But I also want to take my weekends to learn something new. And I think you'll learn so much by attending events and doing something that is different than the ordinary. So those are the 2 events from April, and I loved it. I loved it so much.
Good for you. So next time you're in Vancouver, we'll have to go to some event together. Or if I'm over in your part of Canada, I'll
Yes.
I'll come over. We'll go to a conference or an event together, because I love doing the same thing.
So much fun.
So much fun. So great connecting with other people. And I remember you told me you got a lot of inspiration when you were younger from reading books and listening to podcasts and listening to other women doing TED Talks. Do you have a favorite mentor?
I do have someone that I look up to. I very much like Meghan Markle,
Yes.
and I can see myself in her. I actually can see myself in her because she does a lot of things related to women's empowerment. And I love every speech that she has given about, empowering other women and helping other women. She also believes in the whole power of mentoring. She does a lot of, humanitarian work. And I know some people are like, I don't know, some people have opinions about her, but to me, she comes across very genuine and
Yes.
spontaneous. And I do like to believe in my sixth sense when I watch some of her stuff. So I really look up to her because I think she she does a lot of things to to give back to the community, and she does a lot of things related to women's empowerment, which is something that I also do. And this is why I do a lot of the things. It's because of her. Like I watched one of her speeches from the United Nations, and she said this sentence. She was like, we have to give a voice to the voiceless. And that's when I was like, that's it. I also have to do the same thing. And so I
Love it.
resonated with that. And this is why I started to do the things that I do.
I love that. Have you watched any of her Netflix show called With Love, Megan?
Yes, so much fun.
It's so good for the nervous system. I was telling my daughters about it. I'm like, listen, if you're having a stressful day, just turn this on because she's cooking and she's talking. And it's just, I don't know, the way she explains things, it just feels like a nice warm blanket. Is the best way I know how to say it. And that's what I do is like if I had a rough day, it's like, oh, let's put a little Megan on.
Yeah, and I love that she's so like creative, and she does all those like things like I want to say by manual things, but I don't even know if that's the right word to
She
say.
makes so many things from scratch, right? Her
Yeah.
candles, her cooking, her
Yes.
baskets, everything. I'm going to call it Megan medicine because it she does feel a little bit like medicine.
Yes, yes. So I got also inspiration from her. Then I messaged one of my friends who does like she sells candles, and I was like, "Do you do any candles workshop? Because I think I want to attend one of those
That's
events."
awesome. I love it. So Urmi, where can people find you if they're looking for mentorship or they want to learn more about you?
So if people want to connect with me, I have a LinkedIn account called Urmi Hossain. I also have our Instagram page, which is Women in Leadership Victoria Chapter, and they can just follow the page. They can message me directly there, and I'm more than happy to answer. And Women in Leadership, they do have a lot of resources. We have a leadership development program, we have a mentorship program. I also have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. And if people want to purchase my book, it's available on Amazon and it's called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to put all of those links in the details section of the show notes. So, Urmi, I really want to thank you for being here and sharing your story with so much honesty and heart and openness. And I really have to say, I admire the strength and the self awareness it's taken for you to move through the challenges that you faced, not by denying them, but by refusing to let them define who you are. So, your ability really to stand in your truth without slipping into a victim mindset is a really powerful and inspiring thing. So, I'm really grateful you brought that energy to the conversation today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope we get to connect again. So, in closing today, Urmi's story is such a powerful reminder that identity isn't something we're handed, it's something we uncover and we shape and claim over time. So, from growing up between cultures in Italy to stepping into her own power in Canada to becoming a voice for other women finding their way, she shows us what it looks like to turn complexity into clarity and pain into purpose. So I hope her journey sparks something in you, whether you're navigating your own in between spaces or simply learning to take up space as you are. And if any of you listeners want to share your story with us on this platform, please reach out to me. The more we share and connect, the stronger we become. So until next time, fellow Brinkers, stay curious, stay rooted, and keep on becoming. Thanks for joining. And I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast, this is a movement. So share this information with your friends and let's go, ladies.